Welcome to the channel. We are going over some ratchets I bought about 5 or 6 years ago. These haven't gotten much use because there was a weak link. These are the Titan Rachets. They have a very long length on them, which helps you with leverage when you're trying to bust something free. As a matter of fact, the 3/8 extension, total length on it is almost 18 inches. We got the 1/2 inch coming in at about 24 inches. And the small 1/4 inch, we are coming in at 12 inches. So, first thing, the reason I bought these is I do like a flex head because it allows you to change your throw in a weird axis if you have weird tight configurations where you're trying to get something loose. The only thing that I don't like about these ratchets are the way that these heads are designed. They have a plunger to release the socket. You know, it'll basically lock the socket on, which is great, and it has a plunger. So in design, it works amazing. However, with the way that it's set up, they have to actually hollow out the 3/8 inch drive end, and that inherently makes it weaker. This stuff is hardened steel, so the only thing that it's going to do is just crack. It's not going to bend, it's just going to plain out crack. And with the added length of these handles, I really don't recommend getting the ones with the push button release for that reason. They're just going to snap on you. You really don't have to put a whole lot of torque into this because of the long handle to get this end to snap. Now the reason I know that for a fact is because I've bought tons of rebuild kits for these things. I think I may have one good rebuild kit left over, but they basically break off at the head just like that. Well, recently I was digging around in my toolbox and I found a rebuild kit for it, and I threw it in the wrench and I was like, you know what, I'm going to start using this thing again. But the very first job I went to use my 3/8 ratchet on, I had that feeling where I know if I was going to crank it a little harder, it was going to snap. Well, I did some research and I found out that Titan actually offers these wrenches in a non-push button form. I broke my 1/4 inch. That was the second time I had a failure on this. But what I was able to find out was they offer this whole rebuild kit without the push button, and it's the exact same dimensions as their other wrenches that they got. So I went ahead and bought one for my 3/8. It's not actually broken right now. It's got a very nice fine tooth count, which is something you want. The reverse action, you know, it's nice and smooth, has a little detent in there, feels nice. The only issue is it's just weak. The 1/2 inch, surprisingly, has been holding up pretty well. I have had something that ended up torquing to a rough guesstimate, maybe around 200 foot-pounds. I was nervous. I thought this thing was going to snap, but luckily it didn't. It does have a lot more beef around that pin. If I can find this in a non-push button style, I'll get it. But until it breaks, I'll probably just live with that. However, when you come down to the 3/8 size, it's just not enough material. I've broken several sets of rebuild kits. So anyway, for this rebuild kit, I picked this up on, I think it was Amazon. It's an 11309 rebuild kit for the Titan Rachet. Same tooth design, 3/8 and all that. But if we open it up, you'll notice it's not hollow like the other ratchet is. So if you look at the end here, it's not hollow just like that setup. So this is going to be a lot stronger. I just got done installing it on my 1/4 inch driver, and I haven't had a chance to even use this thing yet, but I can already tell you it's going to last. So with this rebuild kit, it's super easy to do it. You know, basically you can just hook it up with your, what size is that? T10 driver. Super easy. So we'll go ahead and start loosening this thing up. There is one issue that makes this kind of a pain to rebuild. The shifter, or I'm sorry, I'm used to dealing with cars. The lever to actually change the rotation, it's actually pressed in with a pin through the backside right here. That is a little difficult to remove, but what I found is if you actually take, let's see, you can lock it on there. You can actually get this thing to pull out. if you wiggle it, you can get a little bit of a gap. So let me try to get this thing out. Hang on one sec, let me get a punch. Well, my hands have swollen up, or this hammer shrunk, one or the other. But yeah, let's do the trick. Let's try knocking this thing out with a punch. I want a wider surface area. Let's see if we can do that. Oh, felt it move. Here we go. Alright, so we got the plate off. This right here, this is what I was saying is a pain, because this little rivet almost, it's got knurled edges on it. It shoves down to the inside of the selector pin right there. You can kind of see it switching. That's what goes on inside your ratchet. So you can rotate it in one singular direction. You flip the switch, and now you can only rotate it in the other direction. So that's basically how it works. That pin will actually press fit into the back of that selector. So when you're putting it together, if you do it a little too hard, your selector is going to be very stiff and hard to move. So let's get to this rebuild. So first of all, I'm going to just pull this old drive out, and I can either leave those arms in there and just pop this baby in. Oh yeah, don't want to forget your washer. You got a tension washer. You can reuse the old one, or they give you one in the kit. Either way. Really, in a rebuild kit, all they really need to give you is this, and I believe these are called dogs. You know, 2 dogs and that, you know, springs maybe, because you're going to lose them in a new rivet. But you know, you don't really need this backing plate. They do change out the selector arm, so you know it is a decent idea. You know, if you want to change them out, it's a little nicer. It's got a little bit more of a contact on it. I did notice on the 1/4 inch that the selector was actually a 2-piece design, and it had a rivet in the top, and a selector was actually a piece of sheet metal, and this barrel in the bottom was separate as well. So 3-piece design. This new one's all made from 1 piece, so maybe it's something you want to change out. I'm going to change them out just so we're all new in here. We don't have to worry about anything breaking on me. So I'm going to grab the whole spring assembly and the dogs, and we're going to just pull that out. You might want to make note of the direction of those springs, because they do have a little bit of a taper to them. So yeah, we'll go ahead and pull this selector out. Yeah, you can see that it's a different design. We got shiny metal on the bottom. We got black, I believe it's like an oxide coating on the selector, and then you have the same sort of pin you have right here is what's holding this lever to this barrel. So yeah, good idea to upgrade that. We're going to push all this stuff off to the side, and we'll get ready to install the new stuff. So we can grab our dogs. You'll notice that there's a little notch in the bottom that actually fits in a notch in the ratchet. So you're going to want to line them up. One will say right side, the other will say left. Obviously, if you're looking at the ratchet like this, the right side's over here, left side's over there. Remember that trick they taught us back in elementary school. So we'll go ahead and drop those in there, and it kind of has its own way of locking. So we'll set that in there, set up the new one on the left hand side. Oop. It just kind of pushes in there. It doesn't really, nothing's really holding it yet. So we got those. Oh, we can throw a leveler in there, so that just slides in from the bottom. You can even put a piece of tape on them if you're worried about it falling out. So now we are going to rotate the lever to one side so we can allow this dog to move over. Then we can take this spring here, and they go with the wide side facing the dog, if I remember right. And you can do it with one hand if you're lucky. But it's a bit of a juggling act, to be honest with you. Let's try this again here. Push this all the way to the side. Stick our right hand dog in. Alright. Now, let's try that again. Yep, you definitely technically should be wearing safety goggles, but Oh, you know what? I got this backwards. This spring goes in with the wide side facing the body of the ratchet and the narrow side facing the dog leg, or whatever you want to call that thing. The dog leg. Stanky dog leg. So once you got one side in, flip the selector to the other side, and that'll put the right hand one in tension, and now we can freely move the left one open and stick our other spring in that. So let's do that real quick. I just pinch them with my fingers. Careful not to let them go, because these things will fly across the garage and you'll never find it again. Obviously you want to save your old ones just in case that does happen. It'll give you 2 tries per side. So once that's done, we can go ahead and drop our solid core ratchet into place. So just drop that in. It has a wave washer, and that just basically takes up any slack. That goes on the drive end. So we'll just go ahead and drop that on there. You can stick some lube on it if you want. I'm just going to throw it in there for now because I'm going to put some Loctite, and then maybe we can squirt it with some grease afterwards once that sets up. So we're going to take our new plate, and our new plate is identical to the original one. I mean, if you line them up, you know, so you could use the original one, whatever. You really didn't need to get this, so if they want to save some money in manufacturing, just leave that out, you know, no big deal. So that'll just drop on there. This fits the ratchet like it was designed for it. Obviously, the newer designs that they're coming out with these ratchets, they all have this solid core instead of this push button gizmo right there. So once you have that in place, you're going to take your pin and you can slide that in. You want to wiggle it, make sure you're getting it in the hole of the inside of this selector. Once that lines up, don't push it while this selector is not being supported, or you want to move it out of place. But you can take a hammer and just kind of gently tap it in. You can, you know, put it up against your vise and kind of tap that baby in there. I wouldn't go too crazy with it just right off the bat, because if you go too far, it's going to make that selector very difficult to use. So let's hit it a little bit more, try to get it a little bit more flush. All right. You want to make sure this doesn't pop out, obviously. So we're going to go ahead and install the new screws. Lucky for us, they actually install a little bit of blue Loctite on the threads already. Oh, that's yeah, that's a new one. No, wait, those are the originals. Those are the originals. Still have Loctite on them, huh? We're going to go with these fresh ones. Yeah, you can see that Loctite's going all the way up the thread. So we'll throw that on there. Keep this thing running. Same exact bolt, I believe. Same Torx. So let's go ahead and tighten her down. Doesn't have to be like He-Man tight. It's just got to be snug. So that's that. Selector's still working. Ratchet's working. So now we're just going to drive home this pin. For that, I'm going to tap it over there on my vise real quick. Paying attention, making sure I don't get that thing all the way too far down. It's getting there. A little bit of play in it still. There we go. I can get my fingernails under it, so it's not all the way home yet. There we go. I think that's going to do it. So I could get greedy, but right now I can't get my fingernails under it, so I think that's good to go. So our selector feels great. Teeth count feels exactly the same. And now, since we don't have that push button in the center, this is going to be a hell of a lot stronger. So now I'm going to actually be able to use the full length of this ratchet in order to get the job done. So, you know, obviously since you don't have a push button, it's a detent, you know, still has a detent in there, so it will hold your sockets. You just got to pull it. So, no big deal. It's actually got a pretty powerful detent. You know, it's not going to lock it in place like this. I mean, this thing, once it's on there, it's on there. But, you know, what good is that when the thing just breaks the first time you use it? So, I'll save this this rebuild. Maybe eventually I'll find another one of these. These, I'm not sure if they're making them anymore with the push button release. I've seen on their website Titan still does make the long Rachet Set for, I think it's like 80 bucks. This is a hell of a deal. I mean, if you consider, you know, if you buy a Matco ratchet, you're going to spend 80 bucks to $100, you know, for just one extended ratchet. And the way that they compare to like your little typical home gamer craftsman sets, I mean, the reason this wrench was initially, you know, guaranteed for life, is so tiny. I mean, once you get your hand on there, really, you're only like 6 inches away from the center of rotation. So how much torque are you really going to get on there? The only times we ever used to break these things is when we're just sliding cheater bars over the end of the ratchet. You know, a good 5 foot length. You know, you'll snap this thing right in half. You know, they're easy to rebuild. You just pop these clips out, but you know, at the end of the day, all these sharp edges, when you're really cranking on this thing, it's just an uncomfortable ratchet to use. You know, you really can't get any torque into it. You know, if you compare them to, you know, some of the other cheap brands, like what do we got here? This is a Stanley. This is an older Stanley. You know, it's round, it's nice, it feels good, but like I said, you know, it's just a short length. You know, when you compare it to a 3/8 right here, look at the difference. I mean, how much torque could you really even put into something like that? You know, even if you know, this Stanley ratchet head, you could weld it to a longer rod and make it, you know, at least a foot long. That would be pretty adequate. But you know, when you got this big thing like that, I mean, there's nothing you're not gonna be able to get off with that. You know, this thing's gonna snap or bend or break before you know, had anything you can't take off with it. Then of course we got this, what is this, Popular Mechanics, you know. It's got a crappy detent, you know, and if you turn it, I mean, it just feels horrible, you know. So do yourself a favor, get some nice wrenches, and if you can't afford the really nice stuff, I would recommend these. These are very nice ratchets, especially just make sure you get them with a solid core, and they'll hold up. So, yep, that'll pretty much wrap it up. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.